Have you ever had a podcast guest that you were so excited to not only share their episode, but tap into their audience as well? And then you release the episode, you provide them with some information on the episode, maybe you give them a link and a graphic, and then they don't share anything. That can be really frustrating. Today, we're going to talk about how you can get your guests to actually share their episode, as well as some things you can provide to them to ensure that they have everything they need to share it with their audience in a way that can and will feel good for them. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Successful Podcasting Unlocked. I'm your host, Alicia Galati. I'm the founder of Galati Media, a full-service podcast management agency where we help business owners launch and maintain lead-generating podcasts. I am so excited for today's question, which is, how can I get my guest to share about their episode? I'm going to start with a little bit of story time first. I had a client that was recently featured on a podcast. I will not name drop this podcast, but they have a podcast producer. So a podcast producer sent an email to my client and said, "Here is your episode link and here is your graphic. Thank you so much for being on the show." While that would have been all well and good, my client asked me to share about it on their weekly newsletter. That is something that we do provide. We share about their episodes. And so it was an easy thing to just add in to their weekly newsletter. But when I went to see what in the world this episode was actually about, not only did the podcast not have any information about the actual episode, but the titling was just the client's name. The show notes only gave my client's bio and then where to connect further with the host and my client. There was no information within any of that about what the actual episode was about. So if my client is someone who has been on a ton of podcasts, maybe he goes and he is featured on podcasts every single week, then you think that it takes a few months for an episode to get out. He's already gone through 20 podcasts between the time he recorded with this person and the time that he's supposed to promote it. And how in the world is he supposed to remember what in the world was even discussed? So what I had to do is I'm not going to sit there and listen to a 45-minute podcast episode to write a short email snippet. That is not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to spend my time doing that. So instead, I downloaded the podcast episode, threw it into a transcription service, asked Otter AI, which is the transcription service we use, to give me an overview of the episode. I asked it to write a LinkedIn post based on this conversation in my client's voice, and then I was able to pull some bullet points from those timestamps that Otter AI provided. Now, this made my life very easy, but not only that, it's so simple to use as a basis for being able to encourage your guests to share their episode. So here are some things that you're going to want to provide your guests to make sure that they have everything that they need to be able to easily copy and paste, not overthink it, and give your episode out in front of their audience. The first thing that you're going to want to provide those guests is an overview of the conversation. Just a general description, 2 or 3 sentences of what was discussed. You can even take it a step further and write it in the guest's voice. For example, I have a client where she will do this when someone is on her podcast. She will send them an email that includes all of these things we're about to talk about. But in the overview section of here is some easy copy for you to copy and paste or tweak to your liking to share it on social media. And it simply says, "I was recently a guest on insert podcast name, and we talked about," and then it lists out that overview of the conversation. And so it makes it very easy for the guest to not only just grab that information, but also to copy and paste it. So simple. Along with that overview, you're going to want to provide some bullet points. So generally 3 to 4, maybe 5 bullet points that they can then use either in their email copy or on social media to share generally what was also discussed in that episode. The next thing to provide to these guests is quotes. Now, these can be in the form of a simple written quote, which they can then tweak on their social media graphics to make it sound really good, however they want. You can also provide graphics with these quotes and a headshot of the guest. That way it makes it very easy for them to say, oh yes, I was on this show and look at that incredible thing I said. Cool. Make sure with these quotes and any other graphics that you do provide to these guests that these graphics are not heavy with your branding. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, you can have your podcast name on there. Yes, you can have some of your brand colors on there, but make sure that it is at your lightest. So if you have white in your brand colors or if you have black in your brand colors, make sure that it has either of those as the backdrop and the largest portion of the episode graphic to ensure that not only does your guest feel excited to share about it, but it doesn't ruin their feed, right? Everyone is interested in keeping their feed a certain way, or some people are, some people aren't, but this allows your guests to not only feel comfortable and confident to share it, but makes them feel like, oh, well, this isn't going to ruin my feed too much. Cool. And it doesn't clash too much with my branding. Let's go ahead and share it. Along with those quotes, you're going to also want to provide some type of graphics. Like I said, either the episode cover art, or maybe it is a story graphic or something along those lines. A simple graphic that is not just their quote, but shares the episode title as well as their face on there somewhere. The next thing to give these guests is any video content. Marketing is moving into a more video-focused way of presenting things, and especially when it comes to podcasts. So if you have created TikToks, Reels, Shorts, etc., any of those types of content, make sure that you are giving this to your guest so that they have everything that they need to share the episode and to also provide them with some content. We're always looking for more content that we don't have to come up with. And if we've had this conversation and we've dropped these awesome informational bombs to your listeners as guests, we're going to want to share that. It makes it so much easier for not only the guests to share, but also it's stuff that you can use to promote your podcast as well. Everything that we're talking about, these are not things that you're creating on top of your normal marketing or on top of your normal show notes. Last week, we talked about making sure that you have SEO-friendly show notes. All of these things are going to help you be able to share this with your guests, who then can share it with their audience. And the last thing that we're going to give those guests are links. Make sure that those links work, and make sure that you are potentially maybe not using bit.lys or pretty links. Make sure you are sending them directly to your website if you can, or to the podcast hosting website. That will help them be able to find not only where they like to listen, but all of your other links as well. And the last thing that you want to provide your guests is where they can connect further with you, or where they can tag you on social media when they share. Make sure that you're also letting them know in this email of letting them know, hey, your episode is live, that you're going to be tagging them, you're going to be sharing the episode, and make sure you do that as well. If you follow all of these things, I can almost guarantee, because we're adding in human elements here, some guests might share, some guests might not, but this makes it so much easier for your guests to not only share the episode, but be excited about the content that they were able to provide to your audience. That is how you get your guests to share their episode. If you have your own podcasting questions, send me a DM at Successful Podcasting Unlocked on Instagram, or you can go to successfulpodcastingunlocked.com and submit your question there. Until next time, happy podcasting.